Okay, so if you open up the Gemara on Mem Gimel and Beis, so the guys who are in the Agadah Tashir know this Gemara, but there's a nice little lumdish point that comes out of the Gemara. So you remember Rafi? So the Gemara says that David HaMelech was once in the bathhouse and he panicked. Right? He panicked. Why did he panic? Remember, Joel?
Why did he panic?
Because he said, Gewalt, I don't have any mitzvos, right? So if you look at the Gemara quickly, the Gemara, there's 3 lines up in the short lines, right, from the bottom of the short lines. Tana Rabbanan, Chaviv in Yisrael shesivavan HaKadosh Baruch Hu b'mitzvot. We did this like 2 weeks ago. Right, the Jews are beloved because God surrounded them in mitzvot. Tefillin b'rosheihen, they have tefillin on their heads, tefillin b'zroten, tefillin on their arms, sit b'vigdeihen, sit on their clothes, and mezuzah l'petcheihen, and the mezuzah on their doors. V'alein amar David, sheva bayom halalticha mishpatei tzidkecha. I praise you for the 7 mitzvot that I have. Right, that's right, the 7 times I praise you. So David has this theory that the Jews are lucky to surrounded by mitzvah at all times. But that means that he panics because Vishash Nichnas David Leved Hamerchatz Vira Atzma Omeid Arum. So he went into the bathhouse, he saw that he was naked. And he's naked from all 7 of these. He doesn't have tefillin. He's naked, so he doesn't have tzitzis. There's no mezuzah because a bathhouse is pater from a mezuzah, or just like a bathroom, a modern bathroom, right? You don't put a mezuzah on the bathroom. So he's completely bare of mitzvot. So Omar oili shemot arom below mitzvah. Gewalt, I'm standing naked without a mitzvah. V'kevan shenizkar b'milah shebivsaro nijashva da'ato. But once he remembered that he had a milah, so he was calmed down. And so after he leaves, Amar Aleha Shira, he sang a song about his milah. Shneimar lamzeach al hashminit. Right? Yeah, I guess a bit of an interesting song, but singing for the 8th. Mizmor leDavid al midnash nidna bishmini. Right? Praised is God for bris milah that was given on the 8th. So there is a halachic point that emerges from here, and that's what I want to focus on. And this is the following. If I'd asked you, what is the nature of the mitzvah of milah, what would you have said?
It's a mitzvah.
It's a state.
Yeah. It's a mitzvah. I wouldn't have thought the mitzvah, that the concept mitzvah, just by being circumcised, you have mitzvah. I would think it's a mitzvah to do the action.
Good, right? So
it's a one-time thing.
Good. So you would have thought that the mitzvah of milah is a ma'isa mitzvah. You're chayev to like circumcise yourself, right? Well, tzitzis is clearly every time I wear a beged I'm chayev, right? But I would have thought that by milah, right? Tzitzis, maybe you'd say it's a mitzvah as long as I'm wearing it, but that's because I could take it off, I could put it back on. With milah,
you can't really take it off.
Right? Now, in a chanami, the Gemara says that you have no chiluk in olam haba if you're mefer bris. Now, mefer bris was probably a procedure that
Make it look like you,
right the Greeks did of the Jews did in the time of the Greeks to reverse their circumcision. It's called the English is epispasm. Right? Epispasm. I'll read you the official epispasm is, I just Googled it, you get an article called Circumcision in Reverse. For centuries, Jewish boys have regularly been circumcised when they're 8 days old. An unusual challenge to circumcision developed, however, in the Hellenistic period, after about 133 BCE. Hellenistic and Roman societies widely practiced public nakedness, but they abhorred bearing the tip of the penis, called the glans. To expose the glans was considered vulgar, humorous, indecent, or both. This combination of attitudes could be and often was devastating for circumcised Jews. Enjoying oneself in a Greek gymnasium, a Roman bath, where nudity was de rigueur, was a popular and stylish pastime. Here politics was discussed, business deals concluded, athletic contests and exhibitions were also conducted in the nude. Participation in athletics was often a prerequisite for social advancement, yet a circumcised penis effectively precluded this participation. Consequently, for hundreds of years, some Jews underwent a surgical procedure known as epispasm, an operation that corrected a circumcised penis. Right? Some might call it circumcision in reverse. V'chule. Right? So it is, they did something, but obviously it doesn't actually reverse it, right? It would make it look like it was reversed. You would maybe take a little bit of skin, you would stretch it out, whatever they did exactly. And if you want to, right, look at the technical, very painful details of this, you are free to look at it. Right, part of it also was that the Greeks and the Romans celebrated sexuality, right, and this, which weakens the sexual organ, was a negative. But fundamentally, you can't really reverse it, and therefore you would have thought that the mitzvah of bris milah is a Maaseh mitzvah. Or it's a Maaseh mitzvah, not a state of being. Right? Not a mitzvah of a chalos, to be mahul. But if you look at this Gemara, right, this Gemara opens up the possibility that what? Right? Now, how would you understand this Gemara? Right? If you assume that the mitzvah of bris milah is just a mitzvah in a Maaseh, so then why is it that David is so, right, is relieved when he looks at his bris milah? So we have two options, right? One is to say that we're wrong, right? That in fact the mitzvah of bris milah is not to do the Maaseh milah, but what? To be mahul, right? To be circumcised, and that's why there could even be such a category, right, of reversing the milah, right? Because you have a constant mitzvah to be mahul, and if you try to reverse it, you're trying to be mevatel, not the original act, but you're trying to be mevatel, right? You're kurin chalos, right, as a mahul, as someone who is mahul. Or, what would the other way you could read this Gemara? It's a meaning.
It's a reminder.
No, correct. He's not saying that I'm being Mekayim the mitzvah now. He's Mekayim the mitzvah when he had the bris milah. But what? But you're not naked from mitzvahs if you have a milah, because if you're cognizant of what the milah reminds you of, so it means that you're still come up with something, right? Reminds you of God, whatever, right? Reminds you that God, that you're an Eved Hashem, that your very flesh is indicates that you've committed to God, right? It's not that it's a formal mitzvah, right? And that, I think, are the two ways of reading this Gemara. So the Marach or Zarua. Now, who's the Marach or Zarua? I gave you the whole truth. We won't read all of it, right? But who is the Marach or Zarua?
Oh.
So the Or Zarua.
Tosfot on something in tefillin.
Good. So the Or Zarua is Rabbi Yitzchak of Vienna. Right? Rabbi Yitzchak of Vienna. He's a Bala Tosfot. Why is it called Or Zarua?
Without a forearm, doesn't have to put on tefillin.
He has a lot of shita. He's a very important Rishon. He's a very important Rishon. Now, why is his sefer called the Or Zarua?
Because he's from Provence.
He's not from Provence. He's from Vienna. Rabbi Yitzchak of Vienna. I just said he's from Vienna.
No, I just assumed
I understand. Why is he called Or Zarua? Why does he call his sefer Or Zarua? No. Anyone know? Guys in my shir, I've said it before.
Oh, is this the Rabbi Akiva?
Very good. Thank you, Gavi. And for guys who haven't heard this, why is his sefer called Or Zarua? Because apparently he was bothered for his entire life by whether you spell Akiva with an aleph or a hey. And at some point in a dream, he realized that the secret lay in the Rashi Tevot of the pasuk Or Zarua Latzadik Lushrei Lev Simcha, which is Rebbe Reish Akiva with the Sofei Tevot is Rebbe Akiva with a hey, and therefore he knew the halachic way of spelling it was a hey, and he was so inspired by this moment that he named his book Or Zarua, and this was so deep in his family that his son Chaim, when he wrote his book, he called himself Chaim Or Zarua and wrote the Tshuvas Marach Or Zarua, which is Mareno Rab Chaim Or Zarua.
Well, what do you mean halachic way of spelling it? What does that mean? What halachic not?
Gittin, Ksubos.
Oh, like a. Oh.
Yes, the most boring part of Smicha is Shemos Begittin, where literally you sit there and figure out. One very prominent Rosh Hashiva, very serious Talmud Chacham, would say he dropped out of Dayanos when he had to take the Shemos Begittin test, because it literally means taking hundreds and hundreds of names and memorizing them and how you're supposed to spell them, and if it's a non-Hebrew name originally, how do you transliterate it with an ayin. This was the worst part of Smicha, even the little bit Ksubos and Gittin.
Because it's important to spell words.
Correct, because you have to.
If you misspell their name, again, it's invalid.
And then you
record everything.
Oh, it's really easy because you can open up any of the Svarim and figure it out. But we have. It's this weird thing. It's a combination of two things. One is that there are set ways of transliterating, and the other is that when it comes to transliterating, and remember that's important for like Yiddish names, which people have like Mendel or something like that, right? Which is a Yiddish name fundamentally. But with transliteration, it's a combination of these rules that we have for transliteration, plus the number one trump rule is that whatever the first Bezdin determined should be the name of the city, that's usually what we follow. So then you get bizarre things like, for a while, I don't know if they still do this, Mississippi, the halachic spelling was Mem Yud Samach Samach Yud Samach Samach Yud, which is ridiculous, right? And then you have a machlokis in Lakewood, whether it's Lamed Yud Yud Kuf Vav 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 Dalet or Vav 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 Aleph Vav Dalet because they thought it was too weird. And then
Like, how many vavs in a row? Three?
Three, yeah, whatever. And then there's a machlokes. You write with an ayin. When I was in Smicha, right, Bleich taught this, and he once gave us an article. I've mentioned this before. He gave us this article called "Chuvot Me'achorei Mesach HaBarzel," which literally means, right,
From the Iron Curtain.
Chuvot from behind the Iron Curtain, which sounds like really fascinating, right? Like, what shilas are there behind the Iron Curtain? And then it turned out it was an article about how do you spell this like 45-letter Russian river in proper transliteration, and where do you put the vavs and where do you put the olives, and what if one of the rivers dried up? Do you still have to? It was like the most painfully technical article I've ever read. But anyways, so the Or Zarua was really inspired by this, so he called, because he now knew how to spell Akiva, so he renamed his book Akiva, right? Or Zarua after that. And his son named his Sefer, what? No, he says with a hey, because Or Zarula Tzadik Shaleif Simcha is Sofei Tevat Rabbi Akiva with a hey. Okay. This is really not what I want to give here on, but it's important that you know that. Great. So his son, Reb Chaim Or Zarua, writes on this based on our Gemara. But before we look at our Gemara, there's one more Gemara you have to look at. So look at the last WhatsApp that I sent you, right, before Rishmol David's WhatsApp. This is the Gemara in Kiddushin, okay? So the Gemara in Kiddushin says as follows. Lamula, right? One of the mitzvah that a father has on his son is to give him a milah. Minalan, how do you know? Dichtiv vayimal Avraham et Yitzchak. But no, because Avram gave a milah to his son Yitzchak. So you see, it's a father's obligation towards his son. Vehechad lo male avua mechayvi beidina lemimale. If the father doesn't give his son circumcision, so then the bezdin has to. Dichtiv him olachem kol zachar, because it says, you shall give all males a bris milah. Vehechad lo milah beidina, and if the bezdin didn't do it, mechayev ihu lemimal nafshe. He has to give it himself a bris milah. Dichtiv v'ral zachar asher lo yimal b'sar lo v'nicharta, because it says that any male doesn't have a milah, he will get kares. How do you know that a mother is not obligated? Dichtiv kasher tziva oto Elohim oto v'lo ta. And then the Gemara goes on. Okay. Now, from this Gemara, what would you have said? Do you think it's a... What do you think? Do you have any indication?
Well,
Maisa, Tatzah, what do you think?
It seems like a Maaseh, because everyone has... I guess you could see it either way.
You could go both ways. Right? You could go both ways. So what proof do we have? So the Marach Or Zarua tries to prove it from our Gemara. So if you look at what I sent you, Tshuva Yud Aleph in the Marach Or Zarua, he writes, "Ume'inyan hamila nira de'ein ha'av chayev lamol beno biyadav el la'asok she'enimo." So he says, first comes, right? He said, I think that this question is related to another question, which is the father's obligation to do the milah or to make sure that his son gets a milah, which you might have argued is dependent on this, right? Because you could formulate the fact that you can hire a moel in one of two ways. You could either say you can hire a moel because he's a shliach in the Maisa, or you could say that you don't need him to be a shliach because the mitzvah isn't to do the milah, it's to ensure that someone is nimo, right? To bring about a totzah, to bring about a chalos of being nimo. So he says, I think that the mitzvah is not to be mal, right, to give a milah, but to make sure that someone is nimol. Dum de cholhani de chajav hasam the lamdo Torah lamdo umnas lo shita benahar v'chilo yeshker malamed levna la Torah v'cholhani v'sukos etc. Right, it said like all of these, you can hire someone to teach Torah. Skipping down, it says el kolhani ikar mitzvasan eina ha'asiya. In all these mitzvahs, the act is not the main thing. El shamila chatuma b'vsaro. The mitzvah isn't the Maisa Milah, it's that
you have the circumcision.
Right? The Milah is Chatum, is sealed into your skin. And he argues that's the common denominator actually in all of the mitzvah in our Gemara. That tefillin isn't just a Maaseh mitzvah. The Rav has a piece on this. That by tefillin there's a mitzvah of a chalos of being me'utaf in tefillin. And of tzitzis. It's a good question. But he says, and how do I know? She'imlo kein David HaMelech alav l'shalom she'mitztarik shenichon zamer chazra atzmarim below mitzvah niskal Milah. V'imlo mitzvah Milah ela hasiya. He said, how was David happy about the bris Milah if it's just a once in a lifetime mitzvah rather than a chalos? So then he wasn't wearing it. He wasn't performing it. Lama samach lav yosem rosh zova chol gufo shekim mitzvah silon tzitzis kamitzvah Milah mitzvah chol eis kitfil hamunachim rosh v'tzitzis b'vigdal. He says it's a constant state of a mitzvah, just like tzitzis and tefillin, where we say it's not just putting on, but being in a state of wearing tefillin is a mitzvah. Being milad, right? Being milad, right? Being circumcised is a chalos. It's a constant status, just like at every moment that I wear tzitzis or tefillin, it's a mitzvah. Right? The mitzvah by tzitzis and tefillin is, one second, the mitzvah of tzitzis and tefillin is not just to put them on, but to be wearing them. So he argues that the mitzvah is to be nimol. Right? To be nimol, it's a chalos of being nimol. That it's chasum bivsaro. And he says, I'll prove it to you. Because what would happen, he said, if you think that it's a Maaseh mitzvah, and therefore the only reason you can hire a moel is because it's a shliach, what would happen if someone would jump in and give the milah without the permission of the father? So if the mitzvah is the Maaseh mitzvah, what would you say?
No,
it doesn't count.
It wasn't a shliach.
It doesn't count. It wasn't a shliach.
Well, I mean,
what's the nafkamina? As you'd say, there's no nafkamina. What are you going to do now? He doesn't have an erla. So what's the answer?
Well, it would apply to Korban Pesach.
No. What does he say? Just like a ger who already was circumcised as a guy, if he wants to convert, what does he need? You have to draw blood from that part of the body. It's called hatafat dam bris. It's called, right?
You're born without it.
If you're born without it, or you had circumcision, as a guy, medical circumcision, and then you decide to convert, you have to draw blood because you need a maisa, which is called of a milah.
30-year-olds who convert to.
Correct.
Oh, wow.
I think I mentioned to some of my guys that there's a play.
I have a classmate who went through that. And
I said I had.
It was really painful.
There's a play, guys. There's a play by a person named Yisrael Campbell called "Circumcise Me," which is about his life story, where he's converted 3 times. He converted Reform, and then he became conservative, and converted conservative, and then he became Orthodox, and converted Orthodox, and he had to have atafas dam bris 3 times. Right?
Wait, he was already circumcised before.
I forget, it was either bris once and tafas dam bris twice, or he was already medically circumcised and needed tafas bris 3 times. I forget how it worked, but he went through this process 3 times. Right? Because that's what you need, is a tafas dam bris. And he says, if you think it's a Maaseh mitzvah, not a status, so then what does that mean? You need a formal shliach.
3 times at least?
No, this is the Marachor Zarua. No, he's a comedian, right? His wife is a Rosh Hashiva. He is a comedian, right? His wife might have given a shir like that, right? His wife, Avital Hachstein Campbell, used to be the Rosh Kollel in Pardes, which is like a non-denominational or multi-denominational like Torah place in Yerushalayim, and then now she's the head of like one of the Rosh Hashiva thing of Hadar, which is post-denominational halachic egalitarian. I'm not even going to try to figure out what that means, but L'maisa, she knows enough Torah. She might have given the shir. He's a comedian by profession. It's a very funny play. I went when I was in YU as part of the class. Yes, I went as part of the class. We had an advanced seminar on conversion and apostasy with Professor Chaviva Levine, and she brought us the first week of school to this play, and it was interesting because mostly it's clean, but there are a few moments where the humor is a bit not clean. But I was sitting next to her husband, who's also a Rosh Hashiva at YU, Rabbi Jeremy Weider, and my parents decided to come to the play also. So it was like a little bit of an awkward situation. I was sitting next to Rosh Hashiva and my parents, and there's like awkward. It was anyways, but it was a funny play but But his point is that if you think it's a Maaseh mitzvah, so then either the father needs to do the milah or his shliach, right? Just like I can appoint a shliach for any Maaseh mitzvah. But that means that if someone jumped in and did the milah, it wouldn't count, and you need that davas dam bris. But if you think the Maaseh is not a Maaseh mitzvah, it's a mitzvah bitotzah, to be nimol, to have a chalos of being nimol. Similar to, it's a mitzvah to wear tzitzis rather than put them on, and to be wearing tefillin rather than put them on. Right? The Rav has this lamdus that the mitzvah of lehaniach is on the Maaseh mitzvah, but the mitzvah of the bracha of al mitzvahs tefillin is on the chalos of wearing tefillin. Right? This is the Rav's argument of why there are two brachos. One is on the Maaseh, one's on the chalos. What? And that's why, right, you say al mitzvahs after you put on both, right? That's how you justify the Ashkenazi minhag and lamdus, right? That's what he argues. So the Marach Arzua says the same thing is true of bris milah, because he says in a different one, like by truma, right? If someone gives truma on my behalf and I don't send him a shliach, what's the halacha?
You have to separate again.
You have to separate again. It doesn't count, right? That's what's normally true of Maaseh mitzvahs. And therefore, he says later on, "Elavada ein av chayav lamulu biyad biyadol shis al sik shibano nimol ve'ein laharich." And therefore, he says it must be that the nature of the mitzvah is not a Maaseh mitzvah; it's a mitzvah b'totzah. And he has another proof, and he says, I'll give you another proof, and he says that's why that if a father isn't mal his child, he can't eat of the korban pesach, right? Because it's not, right? Meaning he's saying, because it's a constant mitzvah to ensure that your son is in this state, and if you're derelict, right, so it's not just that I'm lacking in a Maaseh mitzvah, it's that I'm lacking, right, like there's like a chalos that's missing, right? It's not, and that type of thing. So he takes as a raya that the father is constantly obligated to ensure that his son is of a certain chalos, right? That he's nimol, and that's why David HaMelech could celebrate that he's being mekayim the Maaseh HaMitzvah, even though he's doing nothing, and he did his bris milah when he was 8 days old. That's enough. And it turns out that this is a machlokes Rambam Ravid. So if you open your Rambam, since you all have Rambams. So the Rambam in the first two halachos of Hilchos Milah, and it's an interesting machlokes Rambam Ravid, because the first two halachos in Hilchos Milah. Hilchos Milah. So we know that milah is one of the two mitzvahs in the Torah that mitzvahs say that if you aren't mekayim it, what's the punishment? Kares. So if I asked you, when do you become chayav kares for not performing a bris milah? What are the possibilities? Bar mitzvah or whatever, right? Or when you die, right? When you die, right? Now, what would that depend on? I mean, what would you say? Right? Well, think about it. I mean, because what would you say? If what? Now help me here. If what? If the mitzvah is to perform the bris milah, so when do you become chayav kares?
When?
At death. Meaning, if I was never makayim the mitzvah, so then I'm chayav kares. And until then, it's not kares. I was just ma'achar the mitzvah. I shouldn't do it. But as long as I did it by the end, I performed the Maaseh mitzvah. But if you think that it's a mitzvah to be nimol, then can I make up for the fact that I did the bris milah at the end of my life by not doing it earlier?
Yeah.
No, because I had many years of being in the chalos shem arel rather than a chalos shem nimo, right? Being a status of an uncircumcised person rather than circumcised, and that status is what is mechayev kares. So you have this very strange machlokes. You find it yet? Got it?
But you said milah?
No, milah, bris milah.
No, milah. What? It's not in Mada, it's not Ava, it's not Ziring, it's not Ava, really. Who would have thought?
Milah, page 211. Right, so look at this. So page 211, right? Parak Aleph Hilchos Milah. The Rambam writes, Milah mitzvahs aseh shechayaven al karesh. Ne'emar v'arel zachar shelo yimol es besar lasov v'nechasa nefesh ha'miyamea. Right, Milah is one of the positive commandments. For not performing it, you're chayav kares. U'mitzvah la'av lamola es beno v'alarav lamola es avadav. And a father has to give a bris milah to his son, a master to his servants, his slaves. Yilid bayis miknas kesef. But even if you're derelict and you don't give a bris milah to your son or to your slaves, it's usher, but it's not kares. Kares is for the one who doesn't have a milah. Okay, now halacha bet. Ein molin beno shel adam shelo midaito el ken avar v'nimna lamulo shebezdin molin oso bal karcho. You're not allowed to give someone a milah without permission, but we force the father, right? Or we force the person to get a milah. If the bezdin doesn't give him milah, he has to give himself a milah. But here's the important line. And every day that he has, that he's not nimol, he's mevatel mitzvahs aseh every day. But he's only chayiv kares once he dies as an arel. The Ravid writes, Ein bazeh tavlin. It's wrong. The chimishum asra is safek potronos min hashamayim. V'chol yom omed biser kares. He says it's not true. You're chayiv kares every single day. You're chayiv kares every single day. So, what's the machlokes Rambam Ravid? Right, the Rambam, and think about it. What was the nafkamina? Right, remember the nafkamina of the Ma'achor Zarua?
Did the Meiser or the Gab?
Right. Yes, and he said, and the nafkamina is, do you need permission from the father? And what does the Rambam say? You need permission from the father. Now I don't know if he would go as far as to say it won't count without the father, right? But he says, why do you need permission from the father? So I don't know if he would go that far. Right, but why does he say, why can't you do it? Because he thinks it's a Maaseh mitzvah, and therefore it's about shlichus. Right? And therefore he says, when do you become chayiv kares? He says, obviously it's usher to go a day without milah, because you mevatel mitzvahs aseh, every day it's omed lecha. But as long as you did it by the end of your life, you weren't chayiv kares, because in the end of the day, you died having done the Maaseh mitzvah. But the Ravid says, no, you're chayiv kares, whatever that means. Whatever it means, you can be chayiv kares every day. But he says, you're chayiv kares every day, and the only reason we don't punish you is because that's rasafik. Right, whatever. But he says, the other way around. He says, the Rambam seems to think the only reason you're not punished because of rasafik. Because you don't know if he'll ever get around to not giving milah. He says, namapitom. Right, you're chayiv every single day. It's a constant isser kares. It's a new isser kares. What do you mean it's a new isser kares? So it's, right, why? Because the Rambam seems to hold that the mitzvah is the Maaseh mitzvah. And therefore, as long as I die having performed the mitzvah, I can't be chayiv kares. Obviously it's usher for me to delay, because I was chayiv to do it years ago and I'm delaying it. That's a problem. But bi'ikaron, if I die having done milah on the last day of my life, so what isser did I violate? I violated the isser of delaying when I should have performed the mitzvah. But I performed the mitzvah at the end of the day. I wasn't chayiv kares. Chayiv kares is only if I was mevatel a mitzvah my entire life. But the Ravid says, no. Every day, I'm chayiv kares. How could you be chayiv kares every day? And the answer is because the problem for him is the isser is to be in a status of being an orel, and the mitzvah is to be nimol. And therefore, every day that I avoid becoming a nimol and I stand as an orel, I'm chayiv kares. Again, what does that mean? Because kares, well, what does kares mean, right? That I'll die by 50, I'll die by 60, that young kids will die, I want to have a chelik and olam haba, different kares mean different things, and I want to try to figure out what it means to be chayiv kares every day, right?
and the thing about dying early and dying doesn't
Correct.
always happen. I mean, some people.
Correct, and that's why I don't want to get into what this means theologically, but lumdishly, the Ravid says, you're chayv kares every day, and it seems to be that the machlokes is that the Rambam holds the Maaseh mitzvah, and therefore I'm only chayv kares if I never perform the Maaseh, and the Ravid says, no, the mitzvah is to be an imel rather than an orel, and therefore every day that I avoid being an orel, being a nimel, and I continue in the status of an orel, I'm chayv kares daily. And I gave you, what I sent you was a few of the achronim who addressed this basic point, but this is the main lumdus. Like I said, this is like a pretty straightforward, like one chakira, right, which emerged in the sugya, but if you look at the Minchas Chinuch, right, that I sent you, the Minchas Chinuch says, what is going on here?
I don't know.
I'm just trying to, there we go. Minchas Chinuch says, Visagi b'tshuva lahavi olav olav b'chaperez lahar be'asen. So he quotes the Rambam and the Ravid. And therefore he gives you another nafkamina. And he says, what would happen according to the Rambam if the following? What would happen if someone was amazed? We don't have to read it inside, but now you have it. So what happens if you were amazed your whole life? You refused to have a bris milah, and then the last day of your life, you decided to get a bris milah, and then Rahman al-Islam, this Rasha gets into a car accident and dies before he has a bris milah. Is he chayav kares? So he says, according to the Rambam, what do you think?
Yes.
No! Because he says what? According to the Rambam, it's a Maaseh mitzvah. You're only chayav kares if you never perform the Maaseh mitzvah. And if the end of your life you were about to do the milah, and then you were prevented by anus, so you're an onus in performing the Maaseh mitzvah, so you're not chayav kares.
That's crazy.
Right? But, right, that's what he thinks would be Yotzei, right, and he quotes this from the Beis Yosef, quoting the Nimukei Yosef, that for a din of onus l'basof, right? He said it may depend on other sugya, which I don't want to get into, which is whether someone who's chilaso meziv is sofo anus, whether it's called anus linyan tefillah, right? This is a machlokas in tefillah, right? If I avoid davening until the last minute and then I fall asleep 5 minutes before the zman, is that considered mezid and therefore I'm not allowed to do tashlumin? Or is that considered anus because at the last moment I was anus and therefore I can do tashlumin? This is a machlokas. The Beis Yosef quotes from the Nimukei Yosef. So he said maybe this depends on this. But he says fundamentally it sounds like, according to the Rambam, you wouldn't be chayav kares because the Rambam thinks that the mitzvah is the Maaseh mitzvah. And therefore if the last moment I meant to perform the mitzvah, I'm anus, so the memela I'm anus, I'm not chayav kares. And then he gets into question: will tshuva help? Right, for not having milah. And he gets into the possibility that maybe this depends on whether it's the minachamurim, but fundamentally he says, right, that should be a nafkamina of this question. Yeah, right. So according to the Rambam, if you think it's about a Maaseh mitzvah, you would say that if his entire life he avoided having a milah, but at the end he tries to do it, but then he's anus for whatever reason, right? He won't be punished. But according to the Ravid, he would be. Now the Chazon Ish argues on this nafkamina, and that's why I sent you the link here from the Chazon Ish. Right? The Chazon Ish is not convinced that this is true, that this would be a nafkamina, and he thinks that maybe even the Rambam would be modeh, that in such a case, you'd be chayav kares. His argument is as follows. Let me just get you let me read the line. Right, mitzvah zav, the hikshol. Shlichus anus. Right, but his argument is basically not that the Rambam doesn't hold that it's a mitzvah in the Maaseh. He just questions whether you can really call someone anus if he was mazed his whole life, and then the last minute, right? He's anus, right? Can you really say that that person is anus, right? So the Chazon Ish is not convinced of this nafkamina. This is what he says. The Moda Harambam she'im nenas acher she'avar b'mezid kagon she'nichras agid o she'nasa cholish yefshar lamolo sh'chayiv kar she'kvar gomar chato dimloken milashkach le'kar la'olam sh'rei b'shashu goes to anus. And he says, he just has the following logic, which is, look, everyone is an anus at the very last second of his life, right? When someone is a goses, right? He can't, right? Like at that moment where if you touched him, he would die, right? Those last few seconds, it's called a goses. Okay. Right? He says at that moment, no one could perform bris milah because you're not allowed to touch him. So what are you going to tell me? Every person, right? He was amazed his whole life, but the last moment he's a gosei, so he's an anus, never chayiv kar. He says obviously the Rambam is going to say that if someone is amazed, and then he's an anus, even according to the Rambam, you might argue.
Maybe it'd be a situation like where you were.
Correct. So right, I'm not convinced by the Chazon Ish because you could have just said no. If you're an anus, but you had no intention of being Mekayim Milah anyways, so then you're Chayiv Kares. The only case that Minchas Chinuch would be arguing is in a case where you tried to do it, right? You were driving to get a bris milah, and then, right, the guy was driving to get a bris milah, and he got into a car accident and died, right? That would be the case, right? So I think you could come up with it and defend this notion and say, no, it's not about being anus. It's being anus when you actually had intention to be Mekayim bris milah. And that's what you would say. So I'm not convinced by the Chazon Ish's point, but fundamentally, Minchas Chinuch argues that again, according to the Rambam, that the mitzvah is a Maaseh mitzvah. So then, if you avoid the Maaseh mitzvah until Memezid, but then the last minute you want to do it, but you're held back by anus, so you're patur from kares. But according to the Rav, it would not be true because you had all those moments at which you weren't nimol b'mezid. And therefore, you're already chayiv kares. The fact that right now I'm not chayiv kares for avoiding it now because I'm an anus doesn't change the fact that earlier in my life, when I insisted on maintaining the status of orel, that I was already chayiv kares. Now again, it could be that this would shed light on what we said on the people who had epispasms, right? Because according to the Rambam, you'd have to say the reason having an epispasm is so bad is not because it's an attempt to be mevatel the mitzvah, because the mitzvah is done. It was a Maaseh mitzvah. It's because of the theology behind it, right? That I'm showing that I'm shunning the Maaseh of the Milah. But according to Ravid, you could say even more, which is, if the mitzvah is to be nimol, right, then attempting to vatel, to make myself look like an Arel is actually messing with the chalos shem nimol.
And you become chayiv kares for it.
Right? Again, whether you think this actually, even if the Ravid you have to say, does this actually reverse Milah? Am I actually now an Arel? If it looks like I have an Arel, yesh ladun. But you could say that for the Ravid, the reason it's so bad is because the mitzvah is to be a nimol, not an Arel, and you're trying to make yourself into an Arel. That's why it's so bad. Not just because of what it reflects theologically, because actually you're trying to mevatel the chalos ha-mitzvah, which for the Ravid is the mitzvah. Right? Is the state of being nimol, not be Arel. And that's, I think, for the Ravid, why it would be dafka so bad. Now the Turei Even, I'll just end with this, gives one more possibility, and he says maybe the chiyuv kares comes from the decision to never have the milah. Right? He quotes the Machlokas Rambam Rav, and he says, I have a third possibility, which is to say neither that you're chayiv kares every day, nor are you only chayiv kares when you die. Right? He says you could argue that it's a Maaseh mitzvah like the Rambam, but say that you become chayiv kares when you decide that you're never going to get a milah. Right? And that's enough to say that you're being mavatal the mitzvah. Right? The Rambam seems to think that not only is it a Maaseh mitzvah, but you only are considered having fully been mavatal the mitzvah if you die without the possibility. The Turei Even says, I have a middle position for you, which is it's a mitzvah of a Maaseh mitzvah, but the chiyuv kares comes from actively deciding that you're never going to get a Milah.
Well, what if your entire life you just push it off? It's like,
No, so correct. So that could be, right, what the Rambam's talking about. But he says I have this middle position, that maybe the kares isn't dying without the possibility, but is deciding that you're not going to do the Maaseh mitzvah, and that's what that's what brings on the chiyuv kares. Again, that's fundamentally agreeing with the Rambam that it's a Maaseh mitzvah. He just argues on the pratim, which is that the chiyuv kares doesn't come from the physical impossibility of performing milah, but from the decision to never perform the Maaseh mitzvah. But again, all of this, the reason that we came into this is because it all really comes from how do you understand this sugya of David HaMelech. Right, just to remind you why this was a menachos sugya. Right, that the Marachor Zerua claims that this sugya is a proof for the Ravid that it's about the status of being nimol, and that's why David HaMelech could say, I am currently being performed the mitzvah of Milah, and that's why I'm not naked from mitzvos.
How does Rambam read the
So how would the Rambam defend it? What you have to say is that according to the Rambam, it wasn't that David HaMelech was saying I'm naked from performing mitzvos, right, per se. Right? The agadata is, I feel like, right, naked of being connected to God or something like that. And the fact that I recognize that I'm constantly, right, it's not that, yes, I'm being Mekayim the mitzvah of Milah now, right? The Rambam would have to argue, first of all, he'd just say it's an agadata, but he'd say at any rate, he'd say, no, the point is that the fact that it reminds me that I'm connected to God, that I performed this mitzvah, that I entered into a bris, is enough to say that I'm still connected to God, even if I'm not performing the formal mitzvah now. Right? The point is not am I performing a formal mitzvah, it's am I connected to God? And yes, well...
You can't even do mitzvah in a bathroom.
Yeah, but you can think about God, right? Yeah.
In a bathroom?
Yeah, Avas Hashem, you could say that by looking at the Milah, he remembered he's connected to God, he's Mekayim mitzvahs Avas Hashem, I don't know, come up with some formulation. But that's how the Rambam is going to defend it. He's going to say, this is not about formally am I performing mitzvahs, it's am I connected to God? And the answer is, even when I'm in a bathhouse and not performing a Maaseh mitzvah, the fact that I am in a bris with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that's enough. Now, of course, there is one more possibility, lamdish possibility, which is to say, tzvei dinim. Right? Which is to say, there's a mitzvah to perform the bris milah, but there's also a status of being nimol. And now, I'm not sure, this sounds like something the Rav would have said, right? But at the moment I don't remember if it was the Rav or I just heard it from someone when I was in YU, right? You could argue that that really it's tzvei dinim, and that's why there are two brachos on bris milah. There's the bracha that the moel makes, which is
I don't know about it.
ala milah.
Fine. Oh.
Right?
Okay.
Right? And what's the bracha that the father makes, even if he's not doing the milah? Lahachniso bevriso shel Avram Avinu.
Okay.
Right? To bring him into the covenant of Avram Avinu. And I definitely remember someone saying it definitely sounds like something the Rav would have said. Whether I'm quoting it from the Rav now, I don't know, so I can't promise. Right? Which is maybe the answer for the Rambam is not just, agadically I'm connected to God, but maybe the Rambam would say there's tzvei dinim. There's a Maaseh mitzvah bris milah, but there is also a chalos of being nimol, and that's called being bebriso shel Avram Avinu. And that's why you have two brachos. Right? You have the bracha of ala milah on the Maaseh mitzvah, and you have the bracha lachnisu riso shel Avram Avinu of entering into the chalos of being nimol, of being part of the bris of Avram Avinu. I think, is that the Rav's for it? Right, the two brachot on Milah. Do you remember this?
Similar to the...
Do you know this? I think it's from the Rav, but I'm not sure. Right? The bracha of Al HaMilah is on the Maaseh mitzvah, and Lachnisa Rizo Shel Avram Avinu is the chalos of being nimol and in the bris, or that is tzvei dinim. It's the Rav, right?
So, parallel to tefillin, right?
Correct, exactly what the Rav says by tefillin, which is that lihaniach tefillin is the Maaseh mitzvah, and Al mitzvah tefillin is the chalos of wearing tefillin, right? So again, I think it's the Rav. I'm pretty sure. Shmuel David also thinks the Rav, right? And if that's the case, then you would have an answer for the Rambam, right? Because you would say, for the Rambam, the Maaseh mitzvah is having the bris. The chiyuv kares comes from... No, from the Maaseh mitzvah. That's why he says you're not chayiv until your death. No. But he doesn't argue with the Ravid, meaning until now we've been assuming the Rambam holds is only a Maaseh mitzvah, and the Ravid holds is only a status of being nimol. But it could be that the Rambam thinks that there's a Maaseh mitzvah, and the chiyuv kares only comes from the being mevatel the Maaseh mitzvah, but he doesn't argue with the Ravid that there is a chalos of being nimol, which is also part of the mitzvah. He just doesn't think that the chiyuv kares comes from that. He thinks that the chiyuv kares comes from the Maaseh mitzvah. And therefore, you would argue, so how would he deal with the Agarata David HaMelech? He would say, in a Chanami, the Maaseh mitzvah was done all the way when he was a child. But there is a chalos of being nimol, right? And that is also part of the mitzvah. And that he was being Mekayim. And again, that is, like the Rav argues by the two brachot of Al Mitzvah Tefillin, Laniach Tefillin, right? I think it was Rav who argued the same thing, that Al Mitzvah, Al Mitzvah's Milah, right? The mitzvah that the Moel makes, or whoever does the Milah makes, is the bracha on the Maisa, and the Richav Lahachniso is on the status. Let me just see if I can find it and check if it is.
That's why I said you should try to make just for that.
Right.
That's the
Right, and that's why he. Right, so I have it here. Right now. Yeah, the other part of this is what
he does forbid.
Right. So I now remember, as Shmuel David said, I can't find the exact quote, but the Rav also argued. What was it that the bracha of al Milah is made before the Maisa of the Milah, but Lachniso is done is said before the Priya, right? Because there's two parts to the Maisa of Bris Milah, right? It's first you cut off the arla and then you pull back, right? Whatever, right, sort of residual skin is left, you pull it back, right? That's the Priya. And the Rav argued that the Priya, right, the chiyuv of not just cutting off the arla, but of clearing off the skin, essentially, that is the chalos of being nimo, which is briso shel Avram Avinu. So the father makes the bracha on the chalos of lachniso after the Maaseh mitzvah of the Milah, but before the Priya. Right? Because the mitzvah of the chalos is on the Priya, being nimo, which is only fully complete when you do the Priya and you pull away the extra skin.
Very similar
To the right. I'm pretty sure I can find this, but I said at the beginning of the shir, it wasn't like miso and Priya. Okay, I can't find the quote. If I find the quote, I'll give it to you. But again, right, that's the possibility. Is to say that really it's Svei Dinim. That again, the Rambam thinks the Maisa mitzvah was Mechayev the Kares. Right, and that's why you're not chayav kares until the end of your life. But he doesn't argue with the Rav that there is also a mitzvah b'totzah, right, of status of being nimol, right? And he thinks that that's how he explained the David HaMelech Gemara. That's how he explained the two brachos of lehachniso versus al Milah, and maybe even that's the difference between Milah and Priya. That the Milah is obviously the Maaseh mitzvah, and that's why you make the bracha of al Milah before that. But you make lehachniso before the Priya, which is about the status of being nimo, of clearing off the skin, to making sure that not only did you cut off the arla, that the person is completely nimo, right, which is this chalos. And that is the way the Rav deals. And again, this all, I know it seems like an agadic passage, but the lumdus that emerges from it is very fundamental to the nature of the mitzvah of Milah. Okay.